a little bit about me, and then we'll start. I grew up as a Christian, and when I was 12 years old, my parents broke away from the church. They were very disillusioned with organized religion. And by the time I was in college, I was agnostic. But in my freshman year, my father passed away suddenly. And at that time, I really began to ask the deep questions. I was in college in the Los Angeles area, and it was at a tremendous fomented time with the civil rights movement, with the great church exodus, where 60 to 70% of Christians and Jews left their congregations and turned to the East, and women's rights. A lot was going on at that time. And of course, the anti-Vietnam War movement. And on top of that, a major death in our family. And interestingly enough, with this great church exodus, religious studies, comparative religions entered the school, college, and university curriculums at that time. And about a year later, I took a course from a divinity school trained Calvinist minister. They were all divinity school trained in those days. Now they aren't so much. But we were reading Houston Smith's book, The Religions of Man, which is now the world's religions. And most of you probably know that Houston Smith was one of the world acclaimed religious studies scholars. And he was also the former president of the Vedanta Society of St. Louis. But at my age and what I was going through, Hinduism was really my least favorite chapter. But thankfully, our professor took us on field trips. And one day he said, we're going to the Vedanta Temple to meet the spiritual grandson of Ramakrishna. And we'd read about Ramakrishna. And so we thought, oh, who could that be? So we went. And I remember walking in the door of that little Hollywood temple. And Swami Pravrajika was seated cross-legged on the shrine dais, giving a Bhagavad Gita class. And I don't remember a word he said, but from across the temple, I realized he was a man of God. And I realized religion was true. So shortly thereafter, I drove up to the Santa Barbara Center. If you've never been there, you really must see it. It's just a beautiful, beautiful center, 50 acres, nestled in the San Ynez Mountains and about 10 minutes away from the ocean, the Pacific Ocean. And I felt that I was at home when I drove into the parking lot. And the Swami was away, but a month later, I had my first interview with him. And then I decided to withdraw from college after my third year and move closer to the center in Santa Barbara so that twice a month when Swami came, I would be able to be near him and to hear his talks. And the nuns made arrangements for me to stay at the convent. The only guest room available was the laundry room. And my bed was a cot. And I shared the laundry room with the watchdogs on the convent. But to me, it was heaven on earth. And at that time, Swami would be at the tables, breakfast, lunch, and supper. Many, many Swamis from America, senior Swamis, disciples of direct disciples in those days, and from India would come to see him. And so I had the privilege of being in my guru's company and these wonderful Swamis. But my favorite time was after Arati, evening Arati, coming down into the convent living room, and the nuns would gather with their knitting, their crocheting, or their ghee light preparations. And a senior nun would read from the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, and Swami Pravrajika would reminisce about the direct disciples of Ramakrishna that he had met, and also Holy Mother. He had met most of the direct disciples. And I remember just thinking, my God, I'm within the orbit of a divine incarnation. And these stories have never been written down. It's an oral tradition. It was so thrilling. And it was those evenings that really made me a nun. And so that was in about 1970, 1971. In 1971, October, a forest fire broke out. It was one of the worst in Santa Barbara's history. October 1971, and I was in Santa Barbara, and I drove up to the convent to help them evacuate, and we had to evacuate twice because the fire jumped the lines. And after about a week, when it was safe, I helped move them back in, and I moved myself in. And Swami gave me special permission to finish my last year of college at the University of California at Santa Barbara. And so in January 1973, I officially joined the convent. So let us move on. I don't want to delay getting into our topic, which is Vivekananda the Guru, how he transmits spirituality to us here and now. So let me open with a chant. Om Vanme Manasi Pratishtita Mano Me Vachi Pratishtitam Avira Viramaheti Vedasya Ma Nishtaha Shrutam Me Ma Prahasi Anena Ditena Oratran Sandatami Ritam Varishyami Satyam Varishyami Tanmamavatu Tadvaktaramavatu Avatu Mam Avatu Vaktaram Om Shanti 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 Om. May my speech be one with my mind, and may my mind be one with my speech. O thou self-luminous Brahman, remove the veil of ignorance before me, that I may behold thy light. Do thou reveal to me the spirit of the scriptures. May the truth of the scriptures be ever present to me. May I seek day and night to realize what I learned from the sages. May I speak the truth of Brahman. May I speak the truth. May it protect me. May it protect my teacher. So Vivekananda the Guru. We're going to begin with one of his guided meditations that he gave in his Jnana Yoga classes. So I'd like you all to sit comfortably. If you're in a chair, sit straight so that your spine is straight and your feet are firmly planted on the ground. And this is to ground you, center you and ground you, and to keep you alert. And this whole meditation, it's a non-dual meditation, is in his words. Let us begin by taking in 3 deep breaths, breathing in strength and expelling all weakness. First, Swamiji begins, we begin our meditation by negation. Think away everything we are not. Analyze everything that comes in the mind by the sheer action of the will. The body drinks, eats, and so on. I am not the body. I am not the mind. I am not thought. I am he. Next, assert what we really are: existence, knowledge, and bliss. Being, knowing, and loving. Meditation is the means of unification of the subject and object. Meditate. Above, it is full of me. Below, it is full of me. In the middle, it is full of me. Excuse me. I am in all beings, and all beings are in me. Om Tat Sat. I am that. I am existence above mind. I am the one spirit of the universe. I am neither pleasure nor pain. I am He. I am the witness. I look on. When health comes, I am the witness. When disease comes, I am the witness. I am existence, knowledge, bliss. I am the essence and nectar of knowledge. Through eternity, I change not. I am calm, resplendent, and unchanging. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace. Who is Vivekananda the Guru? Many of us recognize Vivekananda as the foremost disciple of Sri Ramakrishna, a renowned Hindu representative at the 1893 World's Parliament of Religions, the cyclonic Hindu Swami on his post-parliament lecture tours, the patriot saint of India who vindicated India to the world, a world teacher, an Ishvarakoti, an ever-free soul. But in the West, what kind of guru was Vivekananda? Did it begin and end with the traditional guru-disciple relationship? No. After his success at the 1893 Parliament, Vivekananda wrote to his brother monks, I am a voice without a form. What does this mean? How did he experience himself? The first example, it's a beautiful example, Miss Waldo wrote about. Once she, Miss Ellen Waldo, was a distant cousin of Ralph Waldo Emerson, a distant connection rather, She observed Swami Vivekananda standing before a floor-to-ceiling mirror in a New York drawing room. The mirror seemed to fascinate the Swami. He stood before it again and again, gazing intently at himself. Then he walked up and down the room, lost in thought. Miss Waldo watched anxiously. Now the bubble is going to burst, she thought. He is full of personal vanity. Suddenly, Vivekananda turned to her. Ellen, it is the strangest thing. I cannot remember how I look. I look and look at myself in the glass, but the moment I turn away, I forget completely what I look like. How did others see him? Lillian Montgomery attended his New York lectures in 1900, and she related her experience to Swami Pavitrananda, the former head of the Vedanta Society of New York. She said, as Vivekananda entered the hall and began to speak, immediately I knew that there was something extraordinary about him. As I looked at him, it seemed to me that there was an ocean of consciousness back of him, and in some way there was no limit to his personality. And this ocean of consciousness focused and flowed through his words. It was as if his mind was a limpid lake that was reflecting a divine light. As I listened, she continued, I seemed to sense that if this form as his vanished, that a light which was shining through it would stay there forever, that it would never disappear. It was a strange sensation. Where the ordinary person has a sense of the little ego, in Swami Vivekananda, the sense of I had expanded into something vast and deep and very, very pure and very, very powerful, because it just penetrated within and it aroused something within that was never there before. Such firsthand accounts unveil Vivekananda the Guru and how he transmitted spirituality. Our third example is Miss Josephine MacLeod. She remembered when she first heard Swami Vivekananda in a crowded New York sitting room in January 1895. She said, he said something, the particular words of which I do not remember, but instantly to me, that was truth. And the second sentence he spoke was truth. And the third sentence was truth. Even today, Vivekananda's works make us sit up straight. His words penetrate and become forged into our minds. When I first came into Vedanta and was given his 4 yogas to read, I still remember how I devoured every word. Every word rang true. It was like manna from heaven. Swami Vivekananda's consciousness seemed to lift off the book page itself. Years later, I asked Swami Shraddhananda, disciple of Swami Shivananda and the former head of the Vedanta Society of Sacramento, are there certain scriptures that contain and transmit a greater degree of consciousness to the reader? Yes, he said. The Bhagavad Gita, the 10 major Upanishads, the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, Vivekananda's teachings. Vivekananda's masterpieces, his 4 yogas, are Bhakti, Karma, Raja, and Jnana Yoga. They represent a holistic approach to spirituality. Each yoga corresponds to one of the 4 aspects of our psychophysical being, our emotions, bhakti yoga, our active life, karma yoga, our contemplative nature, raja yoga, and our analytical mind, jnana yoga. Swami Vivekananda's 4 yogas are also universal masterpieces. Not only do they gather and clearly systematize core universal principles, teachings, and practices within Hinduism, but are also designed to be applicable to aspirants of other spiritual traditions. He was a world teacher. Bhakti yoga, the path that gives the reason behind the ritual, the metaphysical science behind the mantra practice that transforms our emotion into a devotion that can hook the mind to the personal God. Do you feel, Vivekananda prods us? That is the question. If you do, you will see the Lord. Karma yoga. It decompartmentalizes our view of the secular, social service, and the sacred, self-realization. It expands our spiritual arena to include our church, our workplace, our home, our every act. Our field of action becomes our face-to-face teacher. Our mind becomes the guru. We begin to observe how our work reflects our attitude toward ourself. And this growing self-awareness then slowly remodels and refines our sense of self until gradually it transforms our behavior and actions into yoga. We start with work and worship, 2 acts which are separate. And gradually we're able to mold our action into work as worship until ultimately we arrive at a state where our work is worship, where serving others as the living God becomes jnana yoga in action. Through yoga, not only do we, the giver, feel fulfilled, the recipient feels elevated. Karma yoga as seva yoga bestows us with ananda, a joy within ourself, which is transmitted to those whom we serve. It acts as a holistic medicine, a universal prescription for well-being. Jnana yoga. Through logic and our discriminative faculty, it reformats our sensate dualistic prone mind to understand and embrace the non-dual Vedanta paradigm. Our true self, which is neither body nor mind, and this cosmos, so in accord with modern science. In Vivekananda's New York classes, he teaches us to worship. How? Virat, the cosmos, consciousness identified with the ocean of matter. It sees all bodies as whirlpools of matter in the ocean of matter. Brahma, the cosmic mind, consciousness identified with all minds. It sees all minds are whirlpools in the ocean of mind. Akshara, Prakriti, primordial ignorance, sees the individual ignorance in the ocean of Maya. Ishvara, the personal God, the soul of souls, sees all souls as its body. Ishvara is the infinite consciousness that also sees everything as its body, mind, and individual consciousness. Swami Vivekananda teaches us how to apply this teaching internally. to see our individual consciousness in relation to cosmic consciousness, gross, subtle, and causal, and ultimately infinite consciousness. So he gives us an expansive meditation. He says, first, try to see the universe as my body. Then know I see this universe, not outside me, but within my mind. The world we see is inside ourselves. Know that perspective to be the reflection of the cosmic mind. Behind all that is the power of Maya, the source of all diversity I see. In this way, we expand our sense of self to deeply feel and realize it is a part of the cosmic and ultimately the infinite. We then expand our sense of self and try to merge it into Ishvara, and then merge Ishvara into the higher self, the one self in all. He gives us this practice of affirmation. I am the self of the universe, eternally blessed, eternally free. Swami Vivekananda said, free you are already. How could the free ever be bound? It is a lie. You were never bound. How could the unlimited ever be limited by anything? Infinite divided by infinite, added to infinite, multiplied by infinite, remains infinite. You are infinite. God is infinite. Never allow the mind to think that you have not reached the goal. And he tells and retells us the story of the lion and the sheep. So every time we remember, it drives his affirmation home. Once upon a time, a lioness came upon a flock of sheep, and she jumped at one of them. And as she did, she gave birth to a cub and died on the spot. This lion cub grew up in the flock, ate grass, and bleated like a sheep. It never knew it was a lion. One day, the Lion King came across the flock and was astonished to see this huge lion eating grass and bleating like a sheep. At the sight of him, the flock fled, and the lion sheep with them. But the Lion King watched his opportunity, and one day found the lion sheep asleep, woke him up and said, "You are a lion." "No, I'm not," bleated the lion sheep. But the Lion King took him to a nearby lake. "Look at yourself in the water. Don't you see a lion? That thou art," the Lion King roared. The lion sheep looked. "Well, yes, I am a lion," and began to roar too. Thus, he was a sheep no longer. Raja Yoga, a religion based on realization. Yes, we too can see God through the systematic methodology of contemplation and meditation. Swami Vivekananda gave meditations recorded in his Raja Yoga classes, which Western aspirants find very helpful. Coming from an Ishvara Koti, each one has great power. So for the next 3 to 5 minutes, let's take Swami Vivekananda's Calming the Lake of the Mind, an ancient Sankhya Vedanta mindfulness meditation, and discover for ourselves its value. So again, let's sit straight and still in our chairs, or if you like, on the floor with a cushion so that your spine is straight. And let us place our hands like Vivekananda places his, the right palm upturned, resting in the left upturned palm, on the lap, loosely held, to hold the meditation. And let us close our eyes. Let the mind drift. Picture the mind as a calm lake stretched before you. Thoughts come and go as bubbles rising and breaking on the surface, becoming ripples that are ever widening circles. Make no effort to control your thoughts, but watch them. Follow them in imagination as they rise, break, and float away. Watch the mind as a thing entirely apart from yourself. I am not the mind. I see that I am thinking. I am watching my mind act. Hold fast to the idea. I am the witness, watching my mind drift. The mind is not I. Be the witness. Now let us open our eyes. What do we learn by such a practice, which is often performed at the beginning of our regular meditations? It's called pratyahara, bringing the mind back, centering it. First, it helps to calm and center ourselves. Does it not? Second, it's a useful practice to later analyze and deconstruct the mind. Am I the mind? We ask ourselves. Science tells us that anything that can be observed, in this case, our thoughts, is matter. So mind, according to the Yoga Vedanta tradition, is subtle matter. This is a radical truth. Therefore, I have a mind, but I am not the mind. And with practice, we begin to observe the subconscious mind. As we do this practice regularly before our meditation, we see the hidden thoughts our emotions, our memories, samskaras that are actually fueling our actions throughout the day. Then we learn how to target and attenuate those obstacles through specific yoga practices, counter thoughts, the practice of dispassion and renunciation. Through mindfulness meditation, we learn to refer to our higher mind, the buddhi, which points to the witness consciousness. It is not the witness, but points to that. This buddhi, where is it? This buddhi is in the heart. And that is where spiritual experience takes place. With practice, we're able to periodically reposition ourselves in that attitude throughout the day. Swami Sarvadevananda says, take snack breaks, 5 minutes. You can easily just step back from your work, close your eyes, and watch the mind. And that practice itself gives you power over your mind. And as we advance further, we begin to experience awareness of our awareness, our essential being from which thoughts rise and fall, the unseen seer, the witness consciousness. Ultimately, yoga means complete union. Subject and object become one. Aside from Vivekananda's meditations and his works, how does he continue to transmit spirituality to us here and now? Through his life. Our doubts are voiced through his doubts, his own doubts, addressed directly to his guru, Sri Ramakrishna. When we read these intimate exchanges, they make us feel that Naran provides us with a direct conduit to Sri Ramakrishna. And when Sri Ramakrishna removes Naran's doubts, he's removing our doubts. That is how, through Vivekananda, Ramakrishna and our Vedanta tradition become personal. We feel a kinship with Vivekananda. He belonged to the Brahmo Samaj. He received a Western education. He highly regarded the Western method of analysis and its material science. He used scientific methods to scrutinize Sri Ramakrishna's life, teachings, and extraordinary spiritual experiences. He said, I doubted the master for 6 years. The first example. At first, Naran couldn't accept any man as a guru. But over time, Sri Ramakrishna's immaculate life and ecstatic states showed him to be one who spoke only those truths he himself had realized. During his second visit, upon receiving a touch from Sri Ramakrishna, he described his experience. Immediately, I had a wonderful experience, he said. My eyes were wide open, and I saw that everything in the room, including the walls themselves, was rapidly whirling around me and receding. At the same time, it seemed to me that my consciousness of self, together with the entire universe, was about to vanish into a vast, all-devouring void. Unable to control myself, I cried out loudly, "What are you doing? Don't you know I have parents at home?" Sri Ramakrishna laughed and again touched his heart with his hand. All right, let it stop now. It will happen in its own good time. Naran said, How could someone I thought to be mad destroy the strong structure of my mind and reshape it as if it were a lump of clay? Then Naren became determined to understand the nature and power of this God-man. The second example, he determined not to accept anything Sri Ramakrishna said about spiritual experiences without experiencing them for himself, whether it be belief in the Divine Mother or Nirvikalpa Samadhi. The story goes that after Naren's father's death, when Naren's family was in dire straits, and he begged the master to pray to the Divine Mother Kali to relieve his family of its poverty, Sri Ramakrishna replied, "You don't accept the mother. That is why you suffer. You must go to her yourself with your prayer." 3 times, Naren went to the Kali temple. He saw the mother conscious and living. Overwhelmed, his prayer could only be, "Mother, grant me divine knowledge and devotion always." At last, he begged Sri Ramakrishna to intervene on his behalf. And Sri Ramakrishna promised Naren, "All right, your family will never lack simple food and clothing." The third example. Naren kept his mind open to receive teachings of unknown truths, but subjected Sri Ramakrishna to rigorous testing. One day, Ramakrishna shared with Naren the oneness of the Jiva and Brahman according to non-dualistic Vedanta. After the teaching, Naren joined Hazra in an adjoining room. Hazra was a pretentious devotee, and together they ridiculed the teaching. Can it ever be possible that the water pot is God, that the cup is God, that everything we see and all of us are God? From the other room, Sri Ramakrishna overheard them laughing, and in an ecstatic mood, he approached Naren, smiled, and then touched him. Vivekananda later related, "That day, my mind underwent a complete revolution. I was aghast to realize that there was really nothing whatsoever in the universe but God. When I got back home and sat down to eat, I saw that everything, the plate, the food, my mother who was serving it, and I myself, everything was God and nothing but God. When that first intoxication lost some of its power, I began to see the world as though I were dreaming." We see through the lens of Naren how his use of scientific method, scrutiny, and rigorous questioning not only extracted great truths and displays of spirituality from Sri Ramakrishna, but it also increases our trust in him as a gauge to measure Sri Ramakrishna's greatness, until finally we gain our own conviction from the light of Vivekananda's strength and breadth of mind as he attained his full growth as a world teacher. The breadth of Vedanta that Vivekananda brings to us, it provides the food and freedom for each of us as spiritual aspirants to embrace various spiritual attitudes throughout our lives, even throughout our day, whether as a bhakta, a jnani, a karma or raja yogi, a dualist, a qualified non-dualist, a non-dualist, depending on our mood. In this, Westerners embrace Vivekananda because he democratized religion for us. Such was his universality. Furthermore, all yogas, all approaches to Vedanta are available to all people, regardless of race, nationality, gender, social class. Self-realization is the birthright of both monastic and lay devotees. Once Vivekananda was asked by the chronicler of the Diary of a Disciple, "How many disciples do you have in the West?" "A good many," he replied. 2,000 or 3,000, maybe more. "Are they all initiated by you with mantras?" "Yes." "How is that so? Only Brahmanas are entitled to receive the pranava Om." "My disciples are all Brahmanas," he explained. "In India, one is held to be a Brahmana by one's caste, but in the West, one should be known as such by one's Brahmanya qualities." Vivekananda came to America, wore our clothes, ate our food, spoke our language. He loved us. He belongs to us. He's our friend and our champion. Was it not in this country that he boldly proclaimed, "Come up, O lions, and shake off the delusion that you are sheep. You are souls immortal, spirits free, blessed and eternal. Ye are not matter, ye are not bodies. Matter is your servant, not you the servant of matter." So many places in the United States are connected with him, where we feel his presence and can bring his lila, his divine lila, alive in our minds. Chicago, where he became known to the world at large. New York and San Francisco centers he founded. Boston, Ridgely Manor in upstate New York. Camp Taylor, where he gave the meditation on the heart of a lion. As a young nun, I wondered, why this meditation? And the answer came years later. Swami Vivekananda's meditation speaks to those coping with today's high-stressed lifestyle, and to those many who suffer from anxiety or depression. It touches the hearts of children and adults alike. At Camp Taylor, Swami Vivekananda recaptured the simple, direct approach of the Vedic Rishi to see the world as spiritually alive. And it's embraced by today's spiritual but not religious aspirants who opt for silent retreats or treks into our nation's reserves to seek solitude. One night, Vivekananda built a fire on a sandspit near a stream at Camp Taylor, and a small band of his Western disciples sat around it. He said, "You may meditate on whatever you wish, but I shall meditate on the heart of a lion. That gives strength." So let us together meditate on the heart of a lion. Let us sit straight, spine straight, hands held loosely in our lap as Vivekananda shows us, and close our eyes. Take in 3 deep breaths. Breathe in strength and expel all weakness, all low, mundane thoughts. Picture the lion in the heart. The heart is the center of our sense of identity, the center of our being. Dwell on the spiritual qualities represented by the lion. It radiates strength, fearlessness, majesty, mastery, freedom. The lion is a creature of the savannah. It has no enemies and therefore fears no one. It knows that it is a match for all circumstances. Let us feel we are established in that strength. Know you are free. Strength blazes from the eyes of the lion. It illumines our heart. It courses outward into the thought channels of our mind, through our bloodstream, our veins, the sinews of our arms, hands, and feet. Our body is filled with strength. Our mind is established in strength. We know the self, the Atman, fears nothing, not even death. We are centered in that which transcends time, space, and all that belongs to this fleeting world of matter. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto us all.
Are we done?
We're done.
Okay, very nice, very good, very good. Anyone has a question, please go ahead and ask. If you have any question, Mata, you ready to answer all the questions? Well, I think
You're all lions of Vedanta.
Yeah, Mataji, I have a
you're such a
question.
good teacher.
Who's speaking?
Yeah,
Who is-
this is Samrat. Samrat, Pranam.
Oh,
Yeah, Pranam, can I ask a question?
please do.
Yeah, so we always, we say this to observe our mind and, as a witness and see what it is thinking. Because my question is, that which is observing, is it playing a trick? Is it also the part of the mind that's watching itself?
The meditation, watching, calming the lake of the mind, is the higher mind, the buddhi, is watching the lower mind. The lower mind that usually takes possession of us. So the whole point of this meditation is to learn to stand back and watch the mind and to remember that that which we are observing is subtle matter. We can see our thoughts, we can feel, we can perceive our emotions. There's a little bit of feedback here. Can people turn off their microphones while, so there's no pushback? Okay, so when you are able to perceive, you're gaining an insight into the lower mind that is driving you. The higher mind is observing. But again, it's not the witness. It points to the witness. You cannot see the witness. But this buddhi takes a higher stand. And it is that part that is the master of the lower mind. It reminds me of and when that happens, nobody likes to be watched. The mind becomes embarrassed. And that's why it's a prelude to meditation, because then when the mind becomes embarrassed and calms down, then we can gather the forces of the mind into the heart.
Understood. Thank you so much.
Anybody else? Don't be shy. Is this the first time that you are practicing calming the lake of the mind?
No. This is, just had a question whether it's playing a trick or not. You explained it very well.
Very good. Very good. Yeah.